Good evening, everyone, and welcome to TriVersity Talk. I am Steven Bloomer-Teague.
And I am Wendy Stewart-Kaplan. And thank you all so much for joining us on this freezing cold night in April.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
Before we do any more banter, let's go ahead and introduce our guest co-hosts, two former guests on the show, Simone Kraus and Zoe Heath. Welcome and thank you for doing this with us.
We're doing something really exciting tonight. That's why Simone and Zoe are with us. Y'all, I am so excited about this. We're on fire tonight, aren't we, Steven?
We are. I mean, before we talk about this, though, I have to say, you had mentioned that it's a cold day. And so I told Zoe before we started, this is the last day of the season that I could probably get away with this get-up.
Oh, I'll miss your Buffalo Plaid ensemble.
I know, and this is it. Because it looks like from here on in, we dive into full-on spring 80s, 70s. I am ready for it.
All right. So tonight, the name of our show tonight is Hot Topics, because that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be talking about hot topics. So, Steven, do you have any special announcements before we roll them out?
Well, I will say one thing. TriVersity, we are conducting a virtual town hall on May the 12th at 7 p.m. We're calling it Meet Your Pride Center. If y'all remember, we took a survey a few months ago, and we got the results of that survey, and we want to talk about those results with you and learn a little more from you so that we can make the center the best place it can be. So we'd love if you have us there. Just check out our Facebook page. You can get some more information. Also, if you're on our mailing list, we'll be sending you a lot more stuff about it. So
cool.
With that,
without further ado, so how is this going to work? Do we get to pick the first person? Oh, I love picking people.
So this is how I envisioned it, Now, normally, I mean, because my inspiration for this is The View, as I've said multiple times. So normally what happens is Whoopi Goldberg is the one that moderates all the hot topics. And she introduces a topic and then basically gives it to the floor. So now what I figured we'd do, something a little different, is that each of us would have our turn being the moderator of the hot topic. And we get to pick our topic, and then the rest of us can fill in. And that's where you can fill in as well. Chime in the comments. We will put, if you have a question or you have a comment, we'll do our best to put you on the show, deal with those questions and comments, because we're all hosts tonight, I
love this. All right. So let's get rocking and rolling.
So let's see. Who should we start with first? I'm thinking one of our guest co-hosts.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Come on.
Oh, God, we did age over beauty.
Welcome, Simone.
Okay. The issues that have been going on and has really kind of taken off in the newspapers and started with Arkansas, started with all the other bills throughout all the other states for anti-transgender, the sports, but also for legislating out the right for these trans children to have the ability to transition, hormones, blockers, seeing doctors. It started in Arkansas, with House Bill 1570. And the good thing was it got so much notoriety out there that people were actually bombarding Governor Hutchinson with, this is really pretty much wrong. He kind of took the back door out and weaseled out of it, knowing that his veto would get overturned, saying that they really went too far. That passed, and unfortunately, it was not grandfathered in, so a lot of these kids now have no access to hormones. But then Texas decided to one-up everyone, because of course everything's bigger in Texas.
Okay.
Plus the bullshit. So what Texas did is they had SB 1646, and that one is the legislatures are attempting to insert into basically limiting the private and the medical family matters for the sake of basically scoring cheap political points. They're making it they're criminalizing that it could be child abuse if a parent tries to help their child. They have another bill that's criminalizing and making it a felony for doctors to help these kids. Both have not gotten to the governor yet. Both are in committee. There was this woman, Amber Briggle, who basically has gotten this across the country, all over YouTube and on Facebook. And I'm thinking that part of some of these other governors have backed off of this same type of legislation. 2 out of the 3 were Democrats. 1 was a Republican. But it's people like Amber Briggle, whose transgender son was there, testified. Kaya Shapley, a 4th grader transgender girl, was testifying. And this is the type of stuff that everyone in this country, even though you live in a nice little old blue state and you got all these rights,
it could change in a moment's notice.
Just like that.
Yeah.
I love how the parental rights people who say in one word that, parents should be able to have control if their kids hear anything about LGBTQ history are on the other hand saying that parents shouldn't have any control over their child's health care. I mean, it's just astounding, the inconsistency, if not downright hypocrisy.
Well, yeah, I'm curious, Simone. I'll open up the floor to all of you with this, what we're talking about. I've been reading now because of what passed in Arkansas. There are parents now that are considering leaving there so that they can, give their kids the support that they not only need, the support that they deserve. You all heard at our town hall, we had the endocrinologists there. And this is true that kids that are not allowed to have the hormones that they need often end up suicidal or committing suicide. And to me, that's the end game of all of this. This is what makes it so not right. And anyone that could vote for a bill where that could happen, it's just wrong.
Okay, so what's the logic behind these bills? I mean,
there isn't any.
I mean, what is the claimed logic behind these bills? I mean, why is this considered, quote, child abuse? I mean, what is the argument there? Because I've never really been exactly sure.
Well, basically what the arguments are is that, okay, they're using this as a wedge issue, as they did the trans girls in sports. And they're using this as a wedge issue, as an offshoot of the trans girls in sports. And trying to limit that, because it really hamstrings, it catches where some kid can't transition and they think they're saving this person, but it's a wedge issue. And they're doing it all for political reasons because people don't understand the transgender culture. They all think, oh, we have this agenda. We're brainwashing these kids into doing this and they're having all these surgeries and they just don't understand. But it's a wedge issue. It's about getting power and control. The sad part is that they also are doing some of the legislation, like in Tennessee, not only to limit the hormones for these children and whatnot, but to also then throw the religious aspect.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Which now not only can, a doctor, anybody can deny healthcare to the LGBT people, even in an emergency room situation, because not every visit to the emergency room is an emergency.
Right.
And they always put that in there. Well, if it's a life-threatening situation, well, I'm sorry. It's like telling your 10-year-old child to go out and rake the lawn, and they don't want to do it.
Right.
And you go out there and they do the worst job.
This is a good analogy.
And that's going to be the same thing that they give these people saying, well, you really can't do it. I mean, okay, well, that's a transgender person. Oh, well, okay, let's just kind of go through the motions and not give my best. You don't know. It's all about really dividing and using this as a wedge issue.
Well, nothing for nothing. People talk about, talking about public accommodations and the Equality Act, and people always bring up the same wedding cake, wedding photographers. But you know what? I mean, as sucky as it is to be denied a wedding cake or a photo, I would console myself if I knew that I couldn't be denied health care. These are the things that are truly important. This is why we want the Equality Act. I could care less about a baker, but a hospital, insurance companies, absolutely. That's imperative.
Yeah. I mean, it's just they're basically treating the the LGBT community like we're going back to the Constitution, like 3/5 of a human being. I mean, we're not getting full rights. I mean, I think it walks dangerous ground. Just get the Equality Act through. Takes care of a lot of these problems.
Right.
I mean, in the mid-'80s, you had Louisiana. I always go back to this. In the mid-'80s, Louisiana was all Democrats. Governor, the Senate, the whole bit, right? All the way, none of the, not so much the federal, but all their state level. Overnight, they went Republican. They lost all sorts of rights down there. The unions got decimated and they were the third highest paid construction locals in Baton Rouge, Louisiana in the mid-'80s in the country, behind New York City and San Francisco. And they lost it all. And that's what can happen. You're in a little happy blue state. It flips over. You could lose everything.
Well, I think to your point, Simone, and this is something all of us have to look at, the happy little blue state, believe me, what's lurking out there is much bigger than the happy little blue state. Which brings me, in the administration we're at now, we have X amount of time, right, to get the Equality Act through. But also and I'm going to ask you, Simone, because you're very knowledgeable in this area, what do you think can be done, right, to enlighten and educate people so they understand this? Because the situation with giving kids hormones, all of us understand that it is a good, positive thing. But if I go to 3/4 of the places in this country and talk to perfectly nice people, they would say they don't understand enough. And they would say, oh, no, my gosh, giving them hormone, nobody knows what the outcome's going to be. What if it makes them get cancer? What if they get sick? So how do we put a spin on this to make it popular?
It is. These are kids. Just let them live. Let them not live with this trauma that these adults are fostering onto their heads and down the road will be bothering them. So let these kids be kids. Let the parents make the decisions. Let the healthcare professionals
right,
that are guiding the parents and the children make the decision. Would you want it if you had cancer? Someone sticking their nose in, say, yeah, I don't think you really, doing chemotherapy, that's really against God's laws. I'm going to stick my nose. No, it's up to you and the doctors.
Right.
You don't have to understand everything. Just accept people and move on with your life.
And not for nothing.
It's just really, it's educational. It really comes down.
It is education. Like, I don't feel, Simone, it's as simple as you're making it. We all know those people. We had enough of an issue with our own local high school, right? Imagine going in there and talking with some of those people. Believe me, you would get such pushback. So I'm wondering, and Zoe, maybe you can jump in on this because you've got a great young, fresh mind. Well, how do you think is the best way to communicate and reach the out there?
I mean, to me, part of it is just simply an issue of empathy. I don't know how somebody can watch the testimony of a child talk about things that are life-saving to their identity, both physically and mentally,
right,
and think that they're wrong or they're being misled or corrupted. To me, there is a deep, deep issue in this country, and it's further than just our LGBTQ plus issues. It's an issue with women's contraception. It's an issue with how women of color have a much higher maternal mortality rate in childbirth. And we have a serious issue of just empathizing with people whose experiences may be different than our own. And there's no quick message. There's no quick messaging to get away with that. There's no tagline, because we should just be letting kids be kids. Simone is right. It truly is as simple as that. But for generations of people to be able to heal and understand that just because someone's experiences are different than my own, or just because how they get to be who they are is different than my own journey, that's going to take just generations of healing and empathy.
I mean, nothing for nothing, too. I mean, I think in this country, we don't value mental health care. I mean,
oh my God, Steven, right.
Hormones are life, or puberty blockers are life-saving because they are protecting the mind. It's not just the body that we have to worry about. The mind's probably, I would say, more important than the body, since it's what makes the body function.
Right.
These are life-saving drugs. And I think that is something you have to hit hard every time you talk about this. We are not just talking about something cosmetic here. We're talking about something that could save a child's life.
And two, it's a lot of people, when schools shut down due to the pandemic, a lot of parents were worried about students' mental health and isolation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Valid concern. But why is the conversation not the same when a child is not who they need to be? Right. Because of a lawmaker winning political points. And to Wendy's point about blue states, it's true. I live in New Jersey. It's one of the bluest states in the country, but we have local legislators who are currently voting for bills that are trying to prevent trans kids from playing sports in the New Jersey legislature. Will it pass? Probably not. It'll probably die in committee. But those are our representatives and those are their values. So everybody vote in your November election.
So you brought up a really good point. I'm glad that you brought up about the kids playing sports, because while I was researching for tonight, I came across what was, I thought, a commercial or a PSA with Rebecca Bruskoff in it. And what an amazing piece of communication. This beautiful child, normal, well-adjusted child, there with her friends, just wanting to play sports. And at the end of the day, I don't know how anyone couldn't look at that PSA and not, say these legislations denying these kids hormones. It's just flat out wrong. What is interesting is I'm very much aware of media. I watch lots of things. Simone, I hadn't seen that spot anywhere prior to when I started hunting on the internet. Why can we not turn on our televisions and see this?
This just, I think, came out just in the past week. And
really?
I just saw it too. And I had to watch it 2 or 3 times because I know Rebecca,
I know you do.
Up in this area. And seeing that just reminded me so much of the experiences I had when I went to church and seeing her interact and just being who she is. It's just, it's a phenomenal, basically a little statement that she made with this video.
Right.
And I think if anyone sees it, they should share it and ask other people to share it and ask other people to share it. It's a wonderful. It's absolutely, it brought tears to my eyes, honestly.
It's wonderful and amazing, and I'm really mad she and her family moved away from Sussex County. Do I blame them? No, but I want bragging rights.
I agree.
I tell you, one of the greatest things in the world to me was an article I read. Apparently, these bills are starting to blow up in these anti-LGBTQ politicians' faces, because I think it was something like 65% of people said, why are you wasting your time on this kind of stuff? Don't we have better things to do? Even if people didn't necessarily agree, the transport issue, people were almost evenly divided, but still more people said, why?
Well, what a lot of the
this is not your job.
We're afraid of is what happened with the bathroom bill in North Carolina. When that happened, and there was blowback from corporations and whatnot, they lost like $400 million right off the bat. And now they've done kind of a total calculation, and it's well over $1 billion. $1 billion of
$1 billion
to a state of basically revenue and people coming there because of a bathroom bill. Unfortunately, North Carolina, that's going to be hanging over them for the longest time. I have friends that are, that drive down to Florida that will stop in Virginia, and they will guarantee they will not stop in North Carolina and spend 1 red cent.
Right.
Because of that.
It's also just the same thing, like I was saying before about with mental health. Oh, suddenly you're caring about children's mental health when it's convenient. The bathroom argument about a man being able to just walk in. You could do that anyway. I could do that now.
Zoe, I have done that now. I use men room. Okay. We're going to flat out tell you, I am not waiting online in a ladies' room. You know how it is when you got to go, you got to go. So this whole bathroom thing, I thought you were going to say, Simone, your friends won't pee in North Carolina. They'll pee in Virginia. They'll just hold it, you know? I mean, but this is the reality. Listen to what we're saying here tonight. Do we not all have bigger fish to fry?
That's exactly it. I mean, this is just a division, something to stir up their base.
Right.
And they went after our most vulnerable.
I think you just said it. They went after our most vulnerable.
You know, and if you talked about any of these types of bills and took out, you know, the anti-transgender and put any other minority name out there and read the whole thing, it would be so damn racist and people would be like, my God. But you put, well, we can do this in the transgender community because they really don't care, you know?
And not for nothing, in New Jersey and North Carolina, all of our assembly seats are up, all of their Senate seats are up, and their governor seats are up. And that's when they do this. They pull it out for election season so they can go back to their base and say, I'm protecting America. I know I didn't say words, but neither do they. So I figured that was okay.
I mean, so many younger people came out to vote this time. And really, yeah, exactly. You guys came out and you carried this election for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And unfortunately now, you don't have to do it all the time. But if you keep doing this, you can keep that, you know, pushing them under the rocks. Because I really think Sussex County, there's a chance now with some of these freeholders that there might be some that might get booted, you know?
I know a certain campaign manager who would agree with you. The commissioner candidates who are running against the incumbents in Sussex County are wonderful.
I've read about them.
Like true allies and activists, they're wonderful. So if you live in Sussex County, I'm not going to endorse anybody on a nonpartisan channel, but like, look at my page, you'll know.
Yeah, I know. It's just that, you know, it's, and this is funny. One of Senator Aurora, and I really would love to meet him now, because about 7 years ago, I was over at Honda one time. We were sitting there talking. This is before I got my knees replaced and before I started to transition. And
two pivotal points in your life, I may add.
I would love to run into him again and start that conversation up again, because we know a couple of similar people in construction, and mention them and have him give me that look and said, remember me? I looked a whole lot different then, but
Simone, I would kill for that interaction and to see that. And I will do everything in my power to make it happen because I can.
Yeah.
There we go. So let's dive into another hot topic. So I'll do mine. It's kind of related to what we're talking about, though it's a little narrower. So on Monday, the American Humanist Association withdrew their 1996 Humanist of the Year award from famed evolutionary scientist Richard Dawkins in reaction to remarks Dawkins made on his Twitter feed last week. He tweeted the following: in 2015, Rachel Dolezal, a white chapter president of the NAACP, was vilified for identifying as Black. Some men choose to identify as women, and some women choose to identify as men. You will be vilified if you deny that they literally are what they identify as. Discuss. Now, after, to put it mildly, some heated backlash, but before the revocation of his award, Dawkins wrote, I do not intend to disparage trans people. I see that my academic discuss question has been misconstrued as such, and I deplore this. It was also not my intent to ally in any way with Republican bigots in U.S. now exploiting this issue. Now, people watching may not even know who Richard Dawkins is. So,
Nick, can you elaborate? I only found out today myself after we spoke. So yeah, tell people.
Sounds like kind of an asshole.
Well, he is. So interesting trivia tidbit about Richard Dawkins. He coined the term meme. So if you've ever used the word meme, you can thank Richard Dawkins for that. He is an evolutionary scientist. He was talking about a cultural gene, which he referred to as a meme. But for me, I mean, when I was younger, Richard Dawkins was a bit of a role model for me. In addition to being a scientist, he's also an avowed religious skeptic. And as somebody who lacks religious conviction, let's just say, Richard Dawkins was somebody that I took kind of courage from in expressing my own skepticism, and, you know, living my life in a more open and honest way. I mean, anytime we can come out of the closet and hiding something about ourselves, it's great. And Dawkins inspired me to do that. That's why this is particularly distressing to me. So let's dive into the tweet. Now, Simone, have you ever heard somebody raise that to you? I mean, I'm sure all of you remember Rachel Dolezal. This was all over the news for months. So did you ever hear that yourself, Simone? Something like that tweet?
Yeah, you know, and actually I read that tweet, and, you know, I really have kind of mixed feelings on stuff. I mean, you really stepped on some part of your anatomy by doing that. You know, you should have just left things alone. You know, I'm glad that they did pull the award. You know, if you're going to do something that transphobic and write about it and kind of stand by it, there sometimes need to be some repercussions.
So I have to say, if you don't know much about gender, but you know a lot about Rachel Dolezal, which might describe a lot of people, there might be some sort of crude logic in this, because it's like, oh, well, they are the same, but they're really not. Because gender, it's very difficult to box 7 billion people into 2 little compartments based on observed anatomy versus the pigment of one's skin. So they're not the same thing. And Dawkins should know this. It's like, what the heck? And then my favorite is that, I guess, an attempt at an apology where I was just saying discuss. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Girl, sure, Jan. That's what you were doing. You weren't.
Listen, Steven, he, because of who he is in the community, with somebody like that, it's all about their reputation. So you don't know whether they're talking out of both sides of their mouth. You know what I'm saying? Just saying discuss. Did he really mean that? Again, at the end of the day, you're dealing with a huge ego on a person. So quite frankly, you know, what's the truth coming out of somebody like that? How does that person really feel? You don't know, you know. It's funny, you're talking about a tweet. That's social media, right? And that's the most screwed up thing about social media, because like with one tweet can be interpreted a million different ways. So who knows, unless he was, you know, nailed to the wall on this and put on every single show where he had to really define his position. And that hasn't happened. I'm sorry your role model. I'm sorry your bubble was burst, Steven.
Well, it had been burst before. In 2013, he said something. He made some strange remarks about pedophilia, which, weren't like, oh my God, that's horrifying. But it was like, it's kind of horrifying. So the role model cred had kind of started dying off before, but this was particularly upsetting.
Yeah,
I was going to say.
I feel like I need to take a lap and like take a bath after hearing the tweet. To me, it's like, if you truly wanted to have an open discussion about the interpretations of race and gender, you could have phrased it differently. Because the way he posed his discussion question sounded like he agreed with the notion of Rachel Dolezal and transgender people being equivalent, and obviously untrue. And I feel like as we grow as a society, as people, we're going to have to come to terms with some people not wanting to move on with us, and some of those role models kind of being shattered because they refuse to get on board with where everyone else is in society about acceptance and things like that. I feel like a lot of people recently had to deal with the same thing when J.K. Rowling decided to be a horrible monster turf person.
Oh, that's a great topic, girl. That is a hot topic.
At least she's not a scientist. That's what makes it.
Well, so here's my thing. Because I've had many conversations about it, because I have some friends who are unfortunate enough to still have a Harry Potter tattoo.
Right.
If it's something that the person did by themselves, so for example, J.K. Rowling, the Wizarding World of Harry Potter is hers. I personally will never buy her things. I never read the books as a kid. I read Hunger Games instead. But to me, because it's all from her mind and her work, I wouldn't touch it. I don't know how you could continue to enjoy it, but I would never touch it. Whereas with things like, for example, an actor in a movie or somebody who has made contributions to science, it's a lot harder to remove. I don't want to say the bigot, because I know he may not be a total bigot, but it sounds, it's harder to remove the person and their bigotry from the work, because, well, his science is still valid, even though it's wrong. That science he just tweeted about is wrong. His achievements are still valid and they're important.
But then where do you, okay, this is
Where's
such
the
a
line?
topic. Where do you draw the line? Because you brought up J.K. Rowling, and that is like, you know, I had Harry Potter books. I mean, Harry Potter, we went to the movies, we loved the movies, and then boom, all of a sudden she comes out with this horrific platform. So at what point do you say, I don't want to support that person anymore? I agree with you. I won't anymore. But they just had this same exact thing happen on The View with Sharon Osbourne making remarks towards Cheryl. They were racist remarks. And The View actually had to shut down.
That's the talk, I think, not The View.
Yeah, that right. It was right. But I mean, at what point? And a lot of people were horrified that Sharon Osbourne did that. But then this is what they do. They try, after they do the bad thing, they try and cloak it in something else. So where does it leave the people that love that show and watch that show? Where does it leave the other wonderful hosts that are on that show? This is all very complicated stuff.
Absolutely.
The problem with having someone that has such a following and so many people to listen to, by using language like that and descriptions like that, whatever your personal beliefs are, it filters down to everybody that's reading it. And then you got people that, like me, like, oh, I'm horrified, I'm all upset. And then there's other people like, yeah. And then it just promotes the hate and the bigotry against the transgender community.
Nothing for nothing.
I mean, I'll tell you what, you get somebody who says stuff like that. I don't know how many times when I was on Twitter, I had people say to me, oh, if I identify as a helicopter, am I a helicopter and can land at an airport?
Oh my gosh.
You know, I mean,
that is the exact argument. It is. And it's just, nothing for nothing. It's just so close.
There's enough hate and violence against the transgender that I wish the people that, whether you agree with us or not, when you have 200, 300, 400, 500, maybe a million, a couple of million people following your Twitter feeds, use your head. You know, don't say something that's going to affect a whole nother culture. Because I'll tell you what, I could get on there and say, I'm going to Twitter this, and what, I got 14 people who would follow me. You know, and it's a shameful thing. And then, you know, you don't have enough people. You have some people coming out and condemning that person, and like they did to Piers Morgan and whatnot. It just creates more hate, and you can take any other type of group also by doing something like that.
And he fed into, I mean, the author of The God Delusion fed into every fundamentalist. You can easily see a preacher at a tent revival citing some random verse in Deuteronomy alongside talking about, well, Richard Dawkinson is atheist and he says that, you know.
Hallelujah.
So, I mean, so it's like, we're not just talking about Republican bigots, Richard Dawkins. We're talking about the very people that you've always spoken not so highly of. So, yeah, maybe it's time to maybe read some textbooks on gender. I don't know.
Hence the reason they use the transgender issue, because the discrimination and crosses party lines. That's why we are a wedge issue.
Yes, it does.
Not only conservatives. There's a whole lot of Democrats on the other side that are like, oh yeah. Yeah, you know?
So before we move on, I want to talk about the 1996 award revocation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where do we stand on this? Simone, you had mentioned that you thought it was a good thing. I'm kind of like, where does that stop? I mean, we're talking about 25 years ago. I mean, Zoe wasn't even on the horizon yet.
You weren't even an embryo, Zoe.
But if he would have wrote his tweet 25 years ago or wrote that same thing 25 years ago and asked, oh, well, look what we just dug up. We're going to take this away because no, you did it now. You said it now. So there has to be repercussions.
Yeah, but I wonder, there are repercussions, but like, what if, to Steven's point, do we keep going back with everything, with every single person that said, this comes up a lot, that they dig up on somebody. It comes up with politicians all the time that seem like they're pro LGBTQ, and then they dig up something that they said like in college or high school. How long do we hold people accountable for?
Everybody evolves. My viewpoints where I was 25 years ago are different than now. Should I be held accountable for something I might have wrote in a high school paper now? But if I wrote that same thing now, yeah, I could be held accountable for it. You know? I mean, you have to realize people grow, people evolve.
My thing, as somebody who had really articulate thoughts 25 years ago, is that it really depends on if they apologize and how they apologize. Because if you truly have grown and again, we're talking less about the award now and more about people changing in general. If you apologize and it looks like you're just trying to be like, oh, sorry, I offended you, like, stop making me lose money, then obviously you haven't learned, grown, or changed, and the apology is not real and you can eat shit and die. But wow, that was really intense and nobody laughed.
No, it was good. It was real, Zoe. It was real. I felt it. It was real.
However, if you apologize and you truly know what you did wrong, how you did it wrong, and how you can make amends, that's an entirely different story. As far as him losing his award being revoked, I feel like it's not something anyone would expect of an organization, nor will it be turned into a cultural norm. I don't think he'll be winning any more awards, but I do think it's up to the humanist organization that gave it to
American Humanist Association.
Humanist organization.
I think it would be up to private organizations like that to determine. I think it's a situation by situation basis, and it's up to organizations like themselves to determine. I mean, like I said, I don't think he's up for any more awards. I think if he were like nominated for something right now, that nomination should have been rescinded or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think if his words don't reflect that organization's values and they still consider him a representative of that because of an award that's older than I am, then they have a right to take it away.
Well, there you go.
If you're gonna walk something back, you need to show some remorse.
Yes.
You might have said even years ago, show some remorse and understand the remorse. That shows that you grow and that you understand now.
Yeah. I mean, what he said was no remorse. He discussed. He put it as a passive-aggressive way to make a statement. And nothing for nothing, I was going to not mention it, but he said something else in 2015. Yeah. He said, in 2015, he tweeted, "Is trans woman a woman? Purely semantic. If you define by chromosomes, no. If by self-identification, yes. I call her she out of courtesy." So this is not somebody who was just doing something.
I need to look up a picture of this man. I need to see the audacity for myself.
You know, honestly, I mean, that's the way most Americans look. If I can get to the point where I can have people just be nice and polite to me and not want to say nasty things to me as I walk by, if they know I'm a trans woman, look, they're not going to understand it. Some people have, limited gray matter up there. They unfortunately are conservative and they're deficient in the empathy gene, I'm sorry,
But come on. I'm courteous and will use your pronouns in public, but I'm a renowned figure, so I'm going to invalidate your existence on Twitter as soon as I get home.
Most people, that's the way they think. It's just that most people don't have 2 or 3 million people on a Twitter account. That's how most people think. You know.
Zoe, did you get his picture up?
Yeah, I don't trust him.
He's sneaky. He look sneaky.
He's literally in the bushes, Wendy.
Oh my God.
I didn't Google that picture, but if she's got him in the bushes. Okay. No good. It's just a thing that comes out of his mouth.
Liberal theist. This is what you should be jumping on right here. This is the Antichrist. Richard Dawkins just said something.
In the bushes.
Really ignorant. So let's move on. So now we have either Zoe or Wendy. Why don't you give us a hot topic?
Wendy, I think we should do yours.
Zoe, do you want to go first?
No, I think we should do yours.
Okay, good. Yeah, because Zoe's got stuff to say. So, so this is the latest, right? We know that there's fewer and fewer dyke bars, lesbian bars. I think like 10 in the country at this point. 2 in New York. We had on the wonderful woman from Dyke Beer who informed me of this. I didn't know this. I just assumed there's dyke bars everywhere. You live and you learn. That's why we do this show. So most recently in New York, Henrietta Hudson, downtown, female gay bar, came out and said that they, weren't going to be identifying as a lesbian bar anymore. All right. They were going to identify as a queer bar. So this created on Instagram a lot of controversy. I would think with the older female gay community who identify as lesbian, dyke, or however you want to look at it. I know a lot of my young gay female friends use the terminology queer. So we've got a couple of things going on here. We've got a generation gap, and we've got, we're once again back to those semantics, lesbian, queer, dyke. So this had a lot of people up in arms. And what I'm thinking, is this going to be a trend? Do we think that the word lesbian is going to eventually fall away and be replaced by queer? Queer seems to be a broad-based terminology used by male, female. I just find it used all over the place, and it's got a million definitions to it. So Zoe, there you go. Weigh in on this one.
So for those of you who don't know me, despite the jokes that we just made, I'm 21. So while I turned 21 in January, so I don't really have a lot of experience with bars in general, let alone queer spaces like Henrietta's, and I forget the rest of the name of it because I was listening, but not that well. As far as the term queer goes, I personally, even though I will say I'm a lesbian, I'll use the term dyke. I truly identify personally, because there's a million different types of discourse going on surrounding the word, especially within people my age and younger. I see queer as an identifier for myself, because it also, to me, has to do like a little bit with gender. Does it make sense? No. Do I use she, her pronouns? And do I know I'm cis? Yes. But to me, queer just envelops like being a lesbian, but also like being culturally queer and stuff like that. It's, for me personally, it's hard to describe, but it just fits for me personally better than like lesbian. Despite the fact that by definition, I am a lesbian. I usually identify as queer. I'll introduce myself as a queer person. I know some other people who do that. And like my bi friend, she identifies as queer also, despite the fact that by definition, she is bi. There's actually a lot of people online who normally won't say like lesbian or bi. They'll say WLW, women loving women.
That terminology.
And so I understand that some people see it as an erasure, especially just because for lesbians have always been, they've taken like a step back in the LGBTQ plus community. It's always been like, when we think of like gay culture, we think of like RuPaul's Drag Race and like that gay couple on Modern Family. We don't necessarily think of, lesbians or bisexual women who are in relationship with other women. It's hard to describe, and I don't know how to. I was so excited.
I know, but I'm glad we're talking about this, because a lot of people in your age group really use the word queer more so than I'm just going to generalize, but more so than over 40 or 50. So is it just a thing of age? I'm wondering. And does it take the power away of the definition of lesbian, or does it empower the definition with something greater, to that queer is more all encompassing?
Oh, go ahead, Zoe, and then I'm gonna chime in on this.
I was just gonna say, I like, it's funny because like a lot of people like myself are using it as an identifier, as a label, but we're also at the same time using it as an umbrella term.
Yeah.
Queer is the same. I mean, for some people my age, queer might be the same for me or a non-binary person who's also in what they consider a queer relationship. And I think part of it is generational, but mostly just because it also like it stopped being a slur because we've been reclaiming it pretty recently. I mean, queer was still super negative in the early 2000s.
And I were talking about that. Yeah.
I was called a queer more times than I can count growing up. So
it was very derogatory.
The word will always make me cringe a little bit. And it's very hard. I mean, as much as I understand and get that, the word has been reclaimed and it's being used in a broad sense, it's just like, and especially when we take, a bar that was a lesbian bar and identified as that, and then turn it into, a more open queer space. It's like, it's kind of like, would a gay bar stand for that? I think men would revolt in the streets,
Interesting though, Steven. Yeah. I'm so glad Steven brought this up. Yes, there is a generation of gay men, 50 on upward. Again, I'm generalizing, so nobody jump down on my throat for this, but that's exactly right. I sashay in the door into what I call a hardcore gay bar. I've been going to gay bars many times, and I get shade, right? If I went into a group of gay men, but more of a queer bar in Brooklyn, people in their 20s, no one would care. Nobody would say anything to me. I wouldn't be made to feel uncomfortable. So there is definitely something going on here. And picking up with some of what you said, Zoe, maybe it is a good thing, this terminology queer. Maybe it needs to be an umbrella. Maybe as people in those LGBTQ letters, we all need to start evolving. I personally have always felt that those letters should be bringing us together, but many times they don't. The L is separate from the G, is separate from the Q, is separate from the T. And now we get into the plus, So maybe as we evolve on this whole issue, we need an umbrella term, and maybe that is queer.
Actually, I do have a quick question, because now I always thought, and again, I've literally been in maybe like, I shouldn't say I've only been a few bars in my life, but I've only been of drinking age in a few bars in my life. I thought a gay bar was always for all gay people. Were gay bars exclusively for like gay men? And they were like,
oh, very segregated. Very.
Really? I thought, okay. Now
I back off there. If you're like in the city, then where there's enough people to segregate, then it's segregated. Now, when I was in South Carolina, it was sort of mixed, but there were also more distinct spaces too. So there was always some sort of segregation.
Yeah, because to me, I always assumed that like they were queer spaces in general. And again, I'm using that umbrella term. But I don't know how I feel personally about that bar changing their name, just because if the people and clientele are already there and it is a mixed space, then why change it? If people, I don't know.
Well, maybe it boils down to, at the end of the day, like, I hate to say this, marketing, right? Maybe they want people your age. Maybe they don't want to be known, as like Cubbyhole, right? In New York is more the women are your age in that bar.
I mean, we're talking about the word queer, and it almost seems like we need to make this like a math problem. You got L plus G plus B plus C equals Q. Like the sum of that is Q, and that's almost seems like by so many of the younger people just identifying as queer.
Yeah,
that's what it is. They're taking all this. It's like a math problem, and it equals Q.
I was never good in math, Simone. I really had to think about that right now, and I put the equal sign up for everything. Right, right. It's so simple when you put it that way.
Yeah, and then for Henrietta's, I mean, yes, I mean, there's a lot of lesbians that are going to be shaken and hurt and whatnot. You know, it's like, you know, maybe the VFW down in the town doesn't have enough members anymore, so now they opened it up to, you know,
well, yeah,
street, you know.
Point maybe, you know, with all of these dyke bars closing, and again, this was something, Zoe, I was not aware of, you know, because I live in my little bubble in New York. That's a big issue because gay women need to have a safe space. And the woman from Dyke Beer who was on our show, she talked about that a lot, that she and her partner do not feel comfortable going into a, you know, a gay male environment. They don't feel comfortable. And that was something that I hadn't thought about. I just, you know, I have this rose-colored glasses where I think everybody gets along with everybody else because I'm fucking oblivious 3/4 of the time. But what I'm learning it is not that way. I do feel, though, with the shutting down of dyke bars and the seeking of safe spaces, you know, what the heck, call it queer, call it whatever. It's a place where people can come, women can come and be with other women, and feel safe. That's everything.
Yes. Yeah. So let me pop in. We have a question.
Question.
Lovely hubby, Richard Bloomer. So he says this is a bar topic, and he's talking about who's patronizing the bar. If gay women are no longer the predominant money spenders, maybe that's why the bar owners needed to change the term.
And Richard, that's a good point. But no, gay women are patronizing the bar. But like everything, you know, the group of people are getting older, right? And a smart business person, and Richard Bloomer knows this, the smart business person has to reinvent their product to, you know, keep appealing to different demographics. So I guess as a business decision, it makes sense.
I know as a trans woman, especially if I was earlier in my transition, and I think if the bar mentions it's queer, I would feel a whole lot more comfortable going to it than one that was a traditional lesbian bar.
I get good point, Simone.
You know, I know there's going to be people out there that are going to be, they're pulling their hair out now, their head is exploding, but most trans women, that's the way we do feel if we go to a lesbian bar.
And that's ultimately what's so important. I mean, for people to feel safe. Now, like I say, that word, if I saw queer bar, I might back off because, again, that word doesn't make me comfortable. But I appreciate the concept behind it. But still, I mean, what if they're creating a space that feels safe for many people, then that's a good thing. You know, there's just no denying that. Now, I want to win another question we got. From Gabby Salvamini. Are allies welcomed at gay bars, or are they strictly for the LGBTQ plus community? And my answer to this would be, it depends on the bar.
Yeah, and I think Steven is spot on. I will say that is a really good question.
You guys, yeah, my best friend, she just turned 21.
Oh my God. Thank you for asking that
Happy
question.
Birthday, Gabby.
Happy birthday, Gabby. I do think, again, Brooklyn is a lot younger. The people in the bars are younger. You can just go there and be there and hang out, and it's fine. If you go to a older gay male bar on Christopher Street, I'm not going to name the one, but, you know, I can tell you, even for me, I was meeting a bunch of people there, and I walked in by myself, and it was like, woo, ice cold. And the saving grace was the bartender there jumped from behind the counter. He jumped over the bar and he said, Wendy, it's so great to see you. And I was golden after that. But up until that moment, I felt really uncomfortable. And I've rarely experienced that. And, you know, along those lines, Simone, I want to ask you something. Do you, have you ever gone into a gay bar or a gay organization that was having a social where it was mostly gay men. What was your experience? Tell me your feelings on that.
Unfortunately, no, I haven't got to too many gay bars. I've lived a sheltered life with TriVersity.
We're your family.
Yes, no, really, and but yeah, I go back to like when season 1 of Pose, when she wants to go into the bar and it doesn't work out well. I want to be accepted.
I was thinking of the same episode, and now
it resonated with me.
Yeah, I mean, so the main character, who is a trans woman, walks into a gay bar and basically is kicked out, and they won't serve her a drink. And this was the 80s, and
right.
Pose is technically fiction, but I have no doubt shit like that went down all the time. And so, yeah, it's challenging.
It's challenging.
Our community against
Come on, I'm taking you to a gay bar.
Can I come?
Okay.
Yes, Zoe's 21. You can come too. You're legal. Yay.
I'm gonna have all the Shirley Temples I can.
And we're gonna bring your friend Gabby with us too.
You don't have to worry. Simone's the designated driver.
Okay, Zoe, it's time for you to enter the hot seat because you are the last hot topic remaining of the evening.
Yes, I am in my local mall. I am decrepit and I have been waiting for this moment. So this actually worked out really well because I'm switching gears a little bit to, it's still controversial a little bit, that there are a lot of women, people who were assigned female at birth, who either identify as non-binary or even cisgender women who are still in the LGBTQ plus community performing in drag. And they're not doing drag king things like some people think lesbian and bi women do. They are dressing in the exaggerated feminine things that a lot of drag queens we see on TV and at bars would, and doing the same things. They're performing at bars, lip sync and all that stuff. There's a couple different terms for them. AFAB queens, sign female at birth, bio queens, faux queens, female queens, female impersonators, my personal favorite, even if it's not that inclusive.
I love that.
And it's been a little bit of a stir for some other drag performers because traditionally drag queens were for men to do. It was dressing up as a woman. And I just want to get your thoughts on it because personally, I think that drag has just become such an art form that really messes with gender and outside of gender. And for drag queens, it's become less, for me personally, I think it's more of the exaggeration of femininity and what womanhood can mean. And it's just so specifically queer. It's been a definition of our community for years, and it's been more and more in mainstream medias with shows like RuPaul's Drag Race and Dragula and Camp. So yeah, what are your thoughts?
Generational. And I think that's very good. I mean, I so love to listen to Zoe talk and on Facebook and whatnot and see the dynamics and the difference from about people from 40 down, and the younger they get, and the more accepting. And I can see this whole cultural thing, everything just changing as happened. Okay, I'm going to say it, boomer. When the boomers did from the 60s to the 70s, I'm like that older generation when the boomers were there. I can see this happening, and I'm not all angry and upset about it. And I think it's wonderful. And so it's, I love it. I think that's a great idea.
So you feel positive about women impersonating drag queens impersonating women, that you're cool with it.
Exactly. Yes.
So as I said to Zoe earlier, I've probably been doing that for the last 25 years. I'm a performer, and my characters are very draggy because that's what I've always done the best. And I'm not trying to pass, but there's any number of times that I passed, and then the question's been posted. Oh my God, you're a real woman. Oh, you're really funny. That's the first thing they go to. You're really funny. So now it's okay that I'm in drag because I'm funny, right? So everyone's got their different criteria. I'm shooting something next week, and it's a country western person, and I'm going to do it in high drag with the lashes and the wigs. And, you know, I have over 60 wigs. All right. So I can't deny I have the costumes, the wigs, and all of that. I love doing it. You know, for me to do something as Wendy, it's a little boring. For me to do something when I idolize drag, I do think it is the highest art form. And I idolized it long before I knew RuPaul back in the day. I'm so happy she's doing well. But, you know, I've been in this scene since the 70s. That's a long time to be, you know, riding the drag train for. And it's just
the evolution of it too.
Right. Right. And a lot of us were like, when RuPaul really went commercial, there was so much pushback. But then I've gotten to know some of the people that have been on that show, and they're wonderful in their own right. They don't lip sync the way the drag queens did 25 years ago, where it was such an incredible art form. But they've got their own thing. And even I had to open up and say, you know what? They're just taking the art form in a different way. It's a fabulous art form, and it's a wonderful thing to appreciate, drag.
A fabulous way to express yourself. And, you know, and whether it's just, you know, you're a woman, whether you're cis or trans, and just want to really bedazzle yourself and look ultra fabulous and entertain, or you're a man who just has that aspect to you that you like to dress fabulously in an evening gown and entertain. It's wonderful.
I saw pictures of you as Honey Boo Boo. I will never forget those. They were just you, and it was so fabulous because it was everyone knew who Honey Boo Boo was, and you had the curls going on and the little dress. And I love, you know what I love about it? It makes people happy. Drag makes people laugh. Drag brings people together. So you know what?
Inspiration. I mean, just look at Miss Penny Cost. I mean, you know, that's taking the art form in a new direction.
This would be really the interesting thing, whether or not now that you're having assigned female at birth doing drag, how some of the very religious type organizations that are so against this, how would all of a sudden, if they found out one of the drag queens was actually born female? I mean, would all of a sudden it'd be like, oh, okay, that's all right.
That would probably, unfortunately, Simone, that would because that's how the labels are in people's heads.
You know, some people might even claim that's not drag, you know, because drag's only if a gay man dresses as a woman, you know, that
a lot of people do feel that way. Yeah. And I'm in the same boat as all of you, where it's just taking the art form to new heights. It's
right.
And new talented people.
It has to grow. It has to grow and evolve.
I have to tell you, drag kept me going through the pandemic. You know, all of a sudden everything shut down, but I could go on Zoom or Stellar, and all my friends who were drag performers, I could tip them on their Venmo, help them out with their finances, right? And they got to do performances. How incredible that we were able to do that. I also got to do that. It got me through this year. So yeah, drag to me has no gender. Drag is queer.
Now, so before we go, I do want let's get into another component of this, because we talked about RuPaul. So I mean, we're all on the same page as far as, you know, cisgender women doing drag, and as women, should they compete?
Yes.
Why not?
Now, RuPaul made a statement.
I'm angry about RuPaul and how he feels about queens who are not cisgender men. I don't like it. I'm mad at him. He fracks on his land. I don't like it.
It's polarizing. Polarizing.
Well, if trans girls in sports is the issue, why make this an issue? Just let them do it.
Yeah.
RuPaul's statement was something to the extent, and it's like what we hear with the trans women in sports, and it was talking about if you wouldn't allow performance-enhancing drugs at the Olympics, would you? And it's like,
not for nothing. Not for nothing. The Boulet brothers, Dragula, in their most recent season, had a drag king compete. And there was another AFAB queen there. I think they identified as non-binary, but they were assigned female at birth, who both competed in the new season. One continued to do drag like the other competitors, but the other performed as a drag king, and spoiler alert, ended up winning. So I want to hear it, RuPaul.
Yeah.
There you go.
But RuPaul, like we were talking about with Richard Dawkins, though, he did seem to offer a genuine apology. Like an apology that was like, I screwed up. And it was like, lesson learned. And
we
I'm
have
like,
redeemed RuPaul on this show then. Yes.
We've given him the TriVersity stamp of approval.
Well, everyone, we are pretty much about 5 minutes over time, but there's no time limit on TriVersity Talk. But before we go, Zoe and Simone, are there any things you want to talk about before we leave? Like Zoe, maybe something about Sussex County Pride?
Oh, yes.
I'm about to turn this into a 2-hour TriVersity special. Kidding. Okay.
Love it.
So, for all of you in the New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, tri-state area, TriVersity is going to be pairing with one of my favorite organizations, may have started it, Sussex County Pride, for our annual Pride Rally on June 12th, 2021. Yes, applause, applause, applause. All social distancing, all CDC things are going to be enforced. We're going to be having masks and stuff. But it's also going to be a really fun day. We're going to have some wonderful drag performers, some of which you have seen on the TriVersity stage. There will be live music from LGBTQ performers, queer performers. We'll have vendors. We'll have tables from other local organizations. It's going to be a fantastic afternoon on the Newton Green in Newton. And that will be starting at 12 noon on June 12th.
Excellent.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
And Simone, from you.
I'm looking forward to that one. But closer to the end of the month, on June 26th, Morris County Pride, we're having an event down in Morristown at the Morristown Museum on Normandy Heights Road. You can find us on Facebook. Pre-buy your tickets, and it'd be $5, to get in. We're gonna have performers. We're gonna have a magician, balloon maker, we're gonna have a comedian.
A comedian.
And we will have other tables and vendors and whatnot, and some food trucks. And that is on June 26th, and it goes from 11 to 3.
So
we're gonna do 10 or
y'all save your dates for some fabulous Pride events. I mean, I'm getting excited already. I mean,
we need some live stuff happening.
I'm double vaxxed, baby. I'm ready.
I'm double vaxxed and ready to go.
Dolly Parton gang.
Yes. This is pretty fantastic. All 4 of us are double vaxxed as of Tuesday with me. So
it's a blessing. It really is a blessing. Fantastic.
Well, everyone, thank you so much. Simone, go ahead.
It was just kind of funny. Everyone that came to the center today, when they walked in, that's the first thing they said, I've been vaccinated.
It's amazing. I can't believe people are denying themselves this vaccination. It makes no sense at all.
Everybody that came to the center today came for one reason, just to be able to interact and mingle with other people.
Wow.
Socially distanced, and we did wear masks inside, but just to be able to see people in 3D.
Oh, we heard you were holding court there today, Simone. That's the word on the street.
And I will say, I open the center Tuesdays from 11 to 4, so you can come see me too. You don't have to just
we'll be holding court.
Yeah, but do you have bagels, and are they 3D?
Oh, so
I come in at 11, so we're past the breakfast period. It's like McDonald's in the old days.
I'm sorry, we can have brunch.
If you want the breakfast club, you come on there.
Simone, make sure you're well fed.
Yeah. Oh yes, I'm well fed.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next week. And let me get our fabulous credits rolling, and good night, everyone.
Nice.